The Dolphins have made a flurry of roster moves over the last 24 hours, and on today's Miami Dolphins Today episode by Chat Sports, we are going to break them all down. I am your host, Nic Rohloff, and before we get into the actual news, make sure you are following me over on Twitter. My handle is Nic_Rohloff, and why should you follow me over Twitter? Well, you would have probably known about these roster moves last night. We update you on all news, rumors surrounding the Miami Dolphins on YouTube, as well as my personal Twitter. It will actually happen first over there, and then we'll make this content on YouTube. You also get Miami Dolphins highlights. We're on the road to 1,400 followers. Help me out. Hit that follow button. All right, the first roster move that the Miami Dolphins made was placing wide receiver DuBose on IR, and most of you knew this move was coming after the scary hit on Sunday against the Houston Texans where he was taken off the field in a stretcher, unconscious. We know that he is now in stable condition. He's actually returning to Miami later this week. I'm just happy that he's all right. It does end his season, unfortunately, but the fact that he is just okay and will have no lingering damage long term, at least to our knowledge right now, is a positive sign because that was a scary situation where play stopped for a good 15 minutes, and it's just good that he's okay. But we do have to kind of parlay this into a conversation about the wide receiver room because with him going on IR, the Dolphins only have 5 wide receivers on this roster. One of them, Jaylen Waddle, who is day-to-day and might miss this week, and another one in Eskridge that is having a issue returning from injury already and might miss this week as well. So with the Dolphins roster kind of in a bad spot in terms of wide receiver depth, you wonder if the Dolphins go and add a wide receiver to the 53-man roster before the season ends, because with only 4 confirmed active guys, or 3 confirmed healthy, and then 1 so-so in Waddle and 1 confirmed hurt in Eskridge, this wide receiver room is lacking some depth. Be the GM for me. Be Chris Grier. Should the Dolphins sign a wide receiver to the 53-man roster? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. All right, a corresponding move to DuBose going on IR. Jake McQuaide was signed to the active 53-man roster. He is a long snapper, a 2-time Pro Bowler with the Rams in 2016 and 2017. And this one is an intriguing signing because, one, this kind of signals the end of Blake Ferguson's season. Right? Like, why would they have 2 long snappers on the roster? Ferguson was attempting to return off of injured reserve. And when this happened last night, I immediately put 2 and 2 together and said, well, if they're signing a long snapper to the 53-man, Blake Ferguson is probably not returning this year. Well, that was confirmed actually today when Mike McDaniel spoke to the media at his weekly Wednesday press conference, and he said that Ferguson will not return. It was an interesting situation for Ferguson. No one knows the situation, but in the middle of the year, around the bye week in week 6, he was placed on IR due to personal reasons, not because of injury, and he has not returned this season. He was designated to at least open his 21-day practice window, but never activated to the 53-man roster, and then it was confirmed today that he is missing the rest of the season. You just have to hope that everything is okay with him personally. Ferguson has done a lot of charity work and community work in Miami. He was signed to an extension this offseason, waived after training camp, then signed to the active roster. So it's been an up and down year for Ferguson. You just hope that everything is good personally for him, and the Dolphins will be without him the rest of the way, and he'll be slotted in to be the long snapper next season. More news to get to in roster moves, but we are getting crushed in our Week 16 sub-battle against the 49ers report. We're taking on Jake Chipper and Chase Sr. this week. I want to beat them on the field. I want to beat them on YouTube. Help me out. Hit that sub button, but you'll also get the #1 Dolphins YouTube coverage as well. All right, back to the P squad is Skylar Thompson. Yes, he was waived on Saturday by the Miami Dolphins. It was a joy. It was awesome. It was like, oh, this guy's finally off the roster. Well, the Dolphins said that if he cleared waivers, they would like to bring him back to the practice squad. That is the case. The Dolphins can't quite shake Skylar Thompson quite yet. A more intriguing addition to the practice squad, Isaiah McKenzie. The wide receiver who has been a special teams ace, but also an intriguing slot wide receiver over his career with the Buffalo Bills. That's what he's most known for. He's been with a plethora of teams. He joins the Dolphins practice squad. You see his career numbers on screen. He has over 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was pretty good for the Bills at times over the past 3 or 4 seasons. And when you think about McKenzie joining this roster and his practice squad, there's a legit chance that he gets activated to the active roster for the final 3 weeks of the season each and every week from the P squad. And we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier in the show as well when discussing the lack of depth at wide receiver for Miami. Mike McDaniel said that Eskridge doesn't expect to return this week. Jaylen Waddle, who's day-to-day with that knee injury, won't practice on Wednesday, putting his status for Sunday against the 49ers up in the air. So with only having Reverend Craycraft, Tyreek Hill, and Malik Washington as 3 healthy wide receivers, there's a chance Isaiah McKenzie gets activated every single week for the remainder of the year. And I'm kind of mellowed about this. Shout out to Mellow Seltzer. If you want to know more about Mellow, hit me up on social media, Nic_Rohloff. My new favorite drink. Helps me relax a little bit. But having an experienced wide receiver like Isaiah McKenzie, who has experience performing in the NFL, has experience in the slot, being a return guy, join the practice squad, it does alleviate some pressure for me because now I can kind of trust him to be that backup special teams return man for Malik Washington. God forbid something happens to him. And I can trust him to fill in and place some slot wide receiver if absolutely necessary because he has done it for multiple years. But maybe you are more concerned than I am. What say you? Are you concerned about the lack of depth at wide receiver with all these injuries? Type C if you are concerned. Type F if you are fine. I'm typing my Fs, though, because I think I'm going to be fine with Isaiah McKenzie into the fold for the final 3 weeks. All right, let's round out the show with some Bradley Chubb talk. We have talked in depth about Chubb quite a bit over the last month, ever since he was close to being opened up in terms of his 21-day practice window, and then while he's been in this window of potentially being activated the 53-man roster. Well, it's no guarantee he actually does return this season. Mike McDaniel, when asked about if the Dolphins would potentially shut down Chubb if they missed the playoffs and were eliminated, McDaniel said that's complicated. The most important thing is allowing guys the opportunity to play football and make sure you are being responsible. I have a hard time telling people a no without a reason. Bradley Chubb is a football player. He wants to play football. So he didn't say that they were going to definitely bring him up. They didn't say that they were going to shut him down. He was kind of non-committal. I am someone who wants to see Bradley Chubb on the football field. I think it would be a great idea to get him out there. Even if you do not feel confident about him returning this week against the 49ers, I would still activate him prior to the game against Cleveland in Week 17 and let him play against the Browns and the Jets to close out the season. Because you have to evaluate what you have in multiple ways. Next season, you are slated to have Bradley Chubb, Jaylen Phillips, and Chop Robinson. That's a pretty nasty edge trio. But if you see that Bradley Chubb does not have the juice anymore, and you see in the final 2-3 games that he doesn't have that explosiveness, you might trade him. You might move off of him this offseason and just roll with Jaylen Phillips and Chop Robinson as your top 2 guys next year and fill in some vet min guys as the 3rd, 4th pass rusher on this roster. And you also potentially could put out good tape if Bradley Chubb does look good in his return in the final 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe a team out there sees that tape and would be interested in trading a 3rd-round pick for Bradley Chubb in the offseason, which would help you then free up some cap space because he's projected to have a $29 million cap hit in 2025. So getting him on the football field would only be beneficial. The only thing that could be negative about him being back out there is if he suffers another injury that keeps him out for another year or something like that, which you can't think like that, though, as a team. You have to go out there and let the football players play, as Mike McDaniel mentioned. All right, that'll do it for today's video. We'll have videos going out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, leading up to our Sunday watch party against the 49ers report. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you join us on Sunday because the Dolphins aren't eliminated from playoff contention. But even if they are, we're still going to be here for every Dolphins game because we're true Dolphins fans that want to watch the games with Dolphins fans. So make sure you subscribe and join us.